where he's talking to a room full of black people and he's telling them that they need to raise their children to be able to handle racism, to be able to withstand racism. And that if they're able to do that, they'll be like Avengers and racism won't affect them. And he says that's more likely to happen than ending racism, because I don't think that's ever going to happen. Now, what he's effectively saying is if you can change the narrative, you don't have to change their reality. You just change how they think, right? So they start to think that racism is something that they need to be tough enough to withstand. The problem with that logic is that's exactly how black children were raised from at least the end of slavery until very, very recently, where we started to go, hey, man, fuck that. We break in cycles, right? Our children deserve to be children. Crazy part is the idea is he's saying, I need you to make your children responsible for racism's impact on them. But I don't believe that white children should have to know about racism because they're too young for these discussions. And we don't have to pretend that that's what's being said, because we see they're taking all types of history that make white children uncomfortable out of schools. So here is black people being held responsible for how racism impacts them, while white people are given a pass to not even think about it. All of that said is, instead of us changing people's material conditions, a lot of this ends up being on us to just change how we approach the world. Where
Biden has decided to pardon Hunter Biden. And I don't have anything to say about that. If I had a child who was convicted of a crime, probably going to do the same thing. Especially when the reasons for taking Hunter Biden to trial were highly political. One thing of note that I just want to bring to your attention is that Joe Biden said that he believes Hunter Biden was selectively prosecuted in this case or in these two trials because he was his son. Selective prosecution is the very thing that we raised in response to Marilyn Mosby and Marilyn Mosby being tried and pursued and sought after for many, many years. Here's what I want you all to know. The same prosecutor who selectively targeted and prosecuted Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, his name is Leo Wise. Leo Wise is the same prosecutor who went after and sought after and hunted Marilyn Mosby. So if Hunter Biden was selectively prosecuted by Leo Wise, even when he had another boss, which is the case in Maryland, right? There were two different prosecutors he worked under. He was demoted under the latter one. Nonetheless, this was still his case against Marilyn Mosby that began under the Trump administration. She also was selectively prosecuted. We cannot now select when someone is selectively prosecuted when we know the cases are hogwash. Marilyn Mosby was tried and convicted for using her own money to purchase property. That is not a crime. They are going after her bar license. They have gone after the property. They have made it difficult for her to earn money. She is out on house arrest, but she is still not free. They have made it very difficult for Marilyn to work. It is time for Joe Biden to pardon Marilyn Mosby. What we should not do is be selective about when we challenge selective prosecutions out of the Department of Justice, which we know still has its residence in the J. Edgar Hoover building. So what I'm telling you all is that it is time for us to push again. There are 91,000 plus signatures on that petition for Marilyn Mosby on Organized 4. Look up Marilyn Mosby, Native Land Pod, petition for pardon. Sign that petition today. We are applying all the pressure. Joe Biden's White House, I want to hear from you. Those of you who are my friends in there know I've reached out to you. I expect to hear an answer, and it should be just, because what we should not do is ensure that justice rolls down like small rivers or light rivers or partial rivers. It needs to roll down like mighty rivers, which means justice should not be partial. Justice should be impartial. When there's a miscarriage of justice, we should fight for it regardless of if your last name is Biden or not. So we've got to push for Marilyn to be pardoned. I ask you all to stand with us, to push with us, to ensure that Marilyn Mosby reclaims her freedom. For the other folks, Kim Gardner, who was forced to take a plea deal over a $5,000 reimbursement, also a prosecutor. What message are we sending to young Black folks who seek to become prosecutors to balance the scale of justice? We have to ensure that we are making the practice of law fair, that we are ensuring that people who want to ensure that justice is rolling down like mighty rivers, even from the prosecutor's office, that they aren't discouraged from doing that. That means that this is our time to fight, because we don't know what we're up against right now. I don't know what's going on, Joe Biden. I expect that you hear this message. I expect that you see this. You have Marilyn Mosby's pardon application. Before, it was she needed to wait to be sentenced. Well, she was sentenced. You didn't need for Hunter Biden to be sentenced, right? You didn't need that. So let this be fair. It is time for you to review that application, to pardon her, to ensure that anybody else who has been politically prosecuted, selectively prosecuted, that you also pardon them. It is very, very important. I will make sure that I share the petition in my stories, and y'all please make sure that you go and sign that petition today. We need Joe Biden to hear from us. Time is not on our side. The time is now. Thanks, y'all.
Welcome to Let It Be Known. There it is, right there. Marilyn Mosby has already been sentenced, as we know, way back in May, and there's been no pardon as of yet. Hunter Biden was scheduled to be sentenced later this month. So they make a point. Like her, I have no problem with the pardon of Hunter Biden, but there are many others. Many others. We're going to talk about that this morning. Marilyn Mosby, the push to get Marilyn Mosby pardoned. If that does not happen, folks, we'll get into that. And a disgraced former Kansas City police detective about to stand trial on charges that he kidnapped and raped two Black women and assaulted Black women over decades, was found dead in his home on Monday. And an interesting thing about that, we'll talk about as well. Jay-Z, his Rock Nation is starting a podcast, and that's going to be the first episode. Um, Also, this morning, cases of mycoplasma pneumonia infection or walking pneumonia is surging in the United States, especially among children. And of course, African American children are disproportionately affected. We'll talk about that this morning. And two Democratic senators are urging the Biden administration, President Biden in particular, to issue a policy directive that could temporarily limit Donald Trump's ability to deploy U.S. military troops domestically after he takes office. And finally, this morning, need your input. Um, the most important rapper of all time, who is laying the claim to that? I'll tell you who. The person who I, hands down, say is the absolute GOAT. Though he's not claiming to be the GOAT, he's just saying he's the most important. We'll talk about that. Throw some little levity into all of this craziness that's going on. But first, here's something that got under my skin, Orangey. A senior advisor, several senior advisors to Vice President Kamala Harris's presidential campaign said that their own internal polling never showed her leading Donald Trump in the election, despite reports that there was she was winning this state ahead in that state. In fact, their internal polling showed her desperately behind from the get-go. David Plouffe, who worked with Obama, and also Stephanie Cutter, Jen O'Malley, Dillon, and Quentin Folks did an interview together, and they predicted that the election would be razor thin. That they had predicted in their internal camp. They were hopeful. They were praying. They said for a miracle. In fact, they said when Kamala Harris became the nominee, she was behind. We kind of, climbed back, even post debate. We still had ourselves down in the battleground states, but very close. They said that they tried to get her, many other folks were trying to get her to distance herself from Joe Biden. His approval ratings were consistently low. And campaign's internal research, according to Quinton, indicated that they should focus their message on attacking Trump, um, or introducing the vice president to voters in a positive way rather than defending her from Trump's attacks, which is absolutely insane. That's the problem. So it's not just so we see where the Democrats, and their go when they go low, we go high nonsense still exists in a awful way. Um, you got you're fighting a monster. I was dragged to see King Kong the other day. Um, you can't fight King Kong with a 45 or even shotguns. Quentin says if we spent this entire race pushing back on immigration attacks or crime attacks and pushing back against trans attacks, at what points are we bringing Trump down or introducing the vice president on our own terms? We're playing on their field. Um, and here's the thing. Uh, the, again, what y'all do with your politics is is your business. But black folks, if you haven't learned, and Quentin is a black folk, he's a black person in a white world. But if you haven't learned to leave these folks alone, um, start your own stuff if you want something. We talked yesterday a lot about for us, by us. No politician, and no politician um, is coming to save you. No party is coming to save you. Um, the ultimate, all of this betrayal. They said they didn't know what else to do. Um, with billions of dollars at their disposal. They said and this is their words too. We know we needed the black vote. We needed black people. Um, Greer has got me saying lately, because she says it all the time, miss me with that. Because once again, you reluctantly gave Roland Martin advertising dollars to help you. And Roland did a tremendous job. He didn't have to go all out, but he realized what was at stake. But you spit in the face of the black press and you thought that was okay with black people. See, it was not just bad enough that you spit in the face of the black press, but you got to understand black people were watching. And as some of us, not all of us, some of us was shouting it out. We was unafraid to. See, y'all used to us Negroes just being quiet, going in the corner. But you did that, and yet you get on TV trying to cast blame everywhere. And you go on the white network, of course, and you talk about we we tried to do this, we tried to do that, and yes, of course, you needed black folks, but yet you totally disrespected and dissed the black press of America. Totally, totally. You played us. You played some of us anyway, because you didn't play me. I got notices. Oh, leave them alone. Don't say nothing. It was hard not to say anything. I could not say anything. We cap for the black press daily, regularly. And these jokers, Quentin Folks and David Palouf and Jen O'Malley Dillon, all of them. And then the Jamie Harrison character. Just because you got some beef with somebody in the black press, stupidity at its finest. And now everybody's got to pay. Everybody, because of childish, your childish grudge because somebody might have done something really, really foolish in your eyes, you know, but it did not affect, it only had the potential, but it was squashed. And more importantly, you got to play the long game. I was reading an article in the New York Times, a 1973 article in the New York Times. What made me read a 1973 article in the New York Times? I'm a sports guy. And there was a sports story of interest, and I wanted to go back and look how it was covered. And so I was reading this article, and at the end of the article, it has on this date in 1973. And it lists so many things. The number one song, blah, 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 blah. Then it said this: begrudgingly, Congress reaffirms their stand for Roe v. Wade. Republicans began their plot to dismantle it. And guess what, folks? Did they ever stop? Did they ever give up? Nope. But Democrats are a different breed. Democrats are a different breed. In the height of the pandemic, at the height of everybody loved black people, George Floyd incident happened. Whole world marching Black Lives Matter. Democrats couldn't even get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed. And do you hear a peep about it anymore? Do you hear a peep about it? Absolutely not. Sheila Jackson Lee passed away. Do you hear a peep about a federal reparations bill? Absolutely not. Oh, and people say, "Oh, you're getting on the administration," because we can get on the administration. You know why we can? You know why we're entitled to get on the administration? Because we were front and center singing their praises when they did what appeared to be the right thing on so many things. And now, um, as the young lady came on, and Paris Brown is right of the Baltimore Times, Republicans are strategists, Democrats are reactionary. Marilyn Mosby sits on house arrest in Baltimore. Same circumstance, same prosecutor, and there's so many others, folks. But so far we got one pardon. I know it's gonna be more. It's always more, and they generally, if I'm not mistaken, David Youngblood, if you're there, I think you're there. They usually come at the end of December, not necessarily the day before the term ends. In some cases, that happens late. It happens in January too, but I think in a lot of cases it happens in December, toward the end of December. But in this case, this is you're done. You're done. Um, I saw something yesterday that suggested that the vice president and President Biden are uh, working behind the scenes to try and push through judicial nomination. No behind the scenes at this point. It's everything's on the table. You got to go right at them. Go straight to the listen. I got 500 judges here. We still have the majority in the Senate right now for another few weeks. Is what they should be saying. Just put them through. Schumer, make it happen. No behind the scenes. Attorney Ben Crump and Angela Rye said they want to remind Biden that justice is still not served for so many in this country. They said there are thousands of people who have been wrongfully convicted and sit in federal prisons today. In a statement, Crump and Rye said while Hunter was selectively prosecuted, he's not the only one. Marilyn Mosby is on house arrest right now with her law license hanging in the balance over purchasing property with her own money. Kim Gardner was forced into taking a plea deal for a $5,000 expense that was approved in an ethics opinion. Crump and Angela Rye, um, said that they will welcome a conversation with the president to discuss ways to use his pardon power to free those others who deserve justice also. And then there are so many lawmakers like Jasmine Crockett, led by Jasmine. There's only a couple of them with backbone. Jasmine Crockett and the AOC. The only, I mean, let's be real about it, right? Trump said a full pardon application for Marilyn Mosby was submitted on Tuesday, um, May 17th, I think he said. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Wait, it's just a simple sign the paper. Sign the paper. Also, this morning, a disgraced former Kansas City police detective about to stand trial on charges that he kidnapped and raped two black women, decades ago, and also terrorized a number of other black women while in uniform, was found dead in his home yesterday morning. Authorities discovered the body of Roger Gillespie. He was 71 after he failed to show up for jury selection in his long-awaited trial in Topeka. They said he died by suicide. When the judge asked where he was, his attorney, Chris Joseph, said in court that his client was despondent over recent press coverage of the case. The retired detective was accused of using his position as a police officer in Kansas City to sexually assault vulnerable black women over the course of decades. And it's interesting because um, Rock Nation, Jay-Z's company, has announced that they will be doing a podcast, and this is going to be the first in their series that they're going to start their podcast with. Jay Z, do you believe in hiring black people? I'm going to sip my tea on that one, my coffee, because the journalist you hire for it is not. How dare I say that the production team is not, but nonetheless, I'll leave Jay Z alone before Totally Randy gets all upset early in the morning in Texas. So, but following a lengthy investigation conducted largely in secret, federal authorities filed a pair of indictments against Gillespie in the fall of 2022. The second case accused him of being in cahoots with a drug kingpin and a sex trafficking ring of underage girls. It's a lot going on. And then he allegedly framed a Kansas City teenager for a double murder in 1994. That man, a black man, Lamont McIntyre, was released from prison in 2017, more than 23 years after he was sent to prison. Um, they agreed to pay him $12.5 million of damages. Um, mm, I mean, this is really something else, but this is something that again. It's so the incoming president wants to give total immunity, sort of what the Supreme Court gave him, to officers. And part of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was to strip them of that qualified immunity. Bobby says, Bobby Henry says, it's hard for someone to be real when they have been quote, behind the scene for so long. And RNG said that particular cop framed black men too. Yeah, and that's who we were talking about. McIntyre was let out of prison finally, and they settled for $12.5 million, 23 years. I'm telling you, I mean, 23 years, 12.5 million doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the damage done to that man. And I am in agreement with you, Mike V. Every single case that he has touched has to be reviewed and scrutinized. He says, this is why I am against using AI in policing, because all of the data is tainted with racism. And that is not just conjecture, Mike V. As you know, but that is fact. That is absolutely fact. Cases of walking pneumonia are surging in America, especially among children, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Walking pneumonia is a milder form of pneumonia, according to Michael Chang, a doctor and infectious disease doctor of infectious disease at UT Health Houston. An estimated 2 million infections occur each year in the US. However, without a national reporting system to track these infections, the exact number is hard to determine. According to available research, African Americans tend to have a higher rate of pneumonia cases compared to other racial groups, including a higher risk of severe complications from walking pneumonia due to factors like socioeconomic disparities and higher prevalence of underlying health conditions. Studies show that African Americans experience higher mortality rates from pneumonia compared to white populations. Studies also show that African Americans have a higher incidence of pneumonia cases compared to all other groups, and the access to health care is limited. And preventive measures like vaccinations, they say, can contribute to higher pneumonia rates among Black Americans, as well as underlying health conditions. But keep that in mind, folks. Vaccinations. Who's going to be in charge of all of that stuff? None other than Robert F. Kennedy. I'm against all vaccinations. It's burning down, folks. It's burning down. It's really, really, this is who you're gonna put in charge of that when folks forever were getting measles, mumps, shots, vaccinations, chicken pox. You know, we're the only people, for the most part, at least in America, Black people, that have a right to be skeptical of vaccines. So that other stuff, cut the nonsense. I mean, I've talked to RFK a few times. I mean, yeah, he comes off. I mean, he's married to Cheryl Hines, right? Who, comes off as a really, um, at the very least, interesting people. But underneath the surface, what is going on? What happened? Eh, I really, really have to believe that he never got any type of professional care after his father was assassinated. He's been affected by that, perhaps more so than other family members who may have gotten some sort of help. Let's see what this guy has to say. I don't have a volume, Greer. Okay, well, so be careful, folks, with your children. In rare cases, walking pneumonia can cause acute central nervous system illnesses, possibly due to antibodies that mistakenly target brain cells. And one way to differentiate walking pneumonia from the common cold is by observing how it spreads within a family, according to the CDC. They say viral infections often spread quickly from person to person within a household. So if siblings or family members get sick within a few days of each other, it's more likely to be a virus than that is causing these symptoms than walking pneumonia. If the illness spreads more slowly, with a week or two between the cases, then it could be walking pneumonia. Now let's go to this video here. I think has it ready. No? Okay.
He's talking to a room full of black people and he's telling them that they need to raise their children to be able to handle racism, to be able to withstand racism. And that if they're able to do that, they'll be like Avengers and racism won't affect them. And he says that's more likely to happen than ending racism, because I don't think that's ever going to happen. Now, what he's effectively saying is if you can change the narrative, you don't have to change their reality. You just change how they think, right? So they start to think that racism is something that they need to be tough enough to withstand. The problem with that logic is that's exactly how black children were raised from at least the end of slavery until very, very recently, where we started to go, hey, man, fuck that. We breaking cycles, right?
Yeah, Austin says that as RFK left his hotel suite at the Ambassador Hotel, he asked RFK Jr. if he wanted to come with him. He said no and saw the assassination on television. Um, the cough with walking pneumonia, just to close out that, so folks will better understand, can linger for a month or more, according to doctors. Unlike most viral infections that resolve faster, parents should also watch for signs of labored breathing in children, like neck or rib muscle straining or difficulty with physical activities such as climbing stairs. So, if these symptoms appear, a pneumonia cough actually varies. So, if these appear, please see your doctor or urgent care or emergency room or something, some professional assistance, medical assistance there. Greer says RFK Jr.'s trauma is none of her business. Yeah, it truly isn't. It's just you gotta wonder sometimes when the person is just going off the rails. Um, Orange G says no white person will ever tell me how to deal with racism. RFK needs to go tell white folks to stop being racist. Oh, remember again, this is what's to come in January, right? This is what's to come. According to the incoming president, the only racism that occurs in the US is against white males. The war is real. Two Democratic senators are urging the president to issue a policy directive that could temporarily limit Trump's ability to deploy U.S. military troops domestically, even after he takes office. Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, who both serve on the Armed Services Committee, sent a letter to the president a couple of days ago, and they copied Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and urged both to issue a policy directive that would ensure that U.S. troops can be used only when local or state authorities ask for federal help or are unable or unwilling to protect the public. In the letter, they write, we write to urge you to issue a policy directive that prohibits the mobilization of active duty military or federalizing National Guard personnel to be deployed against their fellow Americans unless specifically authorized. After Trump takes office on January 20th, he could issue his own policy directive, of course, that would reverse the directive. But Warren and Blumenthal said the letter speaks for itself. Apparently, they hope that publicly highlighting the issue might deter Trump. Are you kidding me? Well, during his first term, Trump considered using the Insurrection Act of all things in response to the Black Lives Matter protests. And this is what we were talking about before, this idea of assembling to protest. That is all coming to an end. Comes in. You can't tell me what to do. Watch the consequences. Go ahead out there with your signs and your banners and free Palestine and Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. There's got to be a different way, and hopefully, folks who are really looking for solutions are looking for a different and perhaps even more effective way. What good are you to us if you're going to go out there and just get shot? And more recently, Trump has again suggested that he's going to use the U.S. military to help deport immigrants who do not have permanent legal status. And we know the green card is out the window now, too. You can't show the green card all you want. It's going to be extremely useless. You remember how in recent years that they went to this real ID with your driver's license and telling you that the old driver's license, despite it expiring in like 2035, it's no good. If you want to enter federal buildings, if you want to get on airplanes, that green card is no good come January 20th. Isn't that something? Mike V says you have to take Trump seriously with this because he used federal power against Black Lives Matter protesters while looking the other way against the Unite the Right protesters with tiki torches. He's not lying there. So all of this again, it's why the push to pardon folks like Marilyn Mosby and many others. And really, Donald Trump said he's going to open up the jails for what he calls the hostages, the J6 hostages. So listen again, uh, spineless Democrats, just open up the federal prisons, open the gates. Listen, everybody, I don't care who you are, you should be putting in pardon papers. Orange G says his retired military ID and VA ID card were no good because of the real ID stuff. Yes, exactly. Um, just folks, if you got somebody incarcerated on the federal level in federal jails, just send in the get your lawyer, draw up the there should be a major push. And again, and speaking of like Quentin folks and those guys, the Biden and Biden folks, it's the other day we say Biden open up the, pardon Mosby and so many others. I mean, the Innocence Project continues to put forth people, legitimate folks, um, even the ACLU, um, and other civil rights and civil liberty organizations. But here's the thing, too, and I said it earlier, and y'all know this to be true. Those who regularly watch Let It Be Known, we have extolled the virtues of the Biden Harris administration and what the fact that they had so many African Americans, particularly Black women, in key places, key roles. Um, Naturally, there was the first Black woman vice president. There's the first Black woman on the Supreme Court, the only Black person, only African American on the Supreme Court, really. Um, all that was great, but then you got to wonder: was that just currying favor? Was that from the heart? Because I'm gonna tell you something. And Bobby Henry, I know you're gonna have your ears tickled on this one, but I'm gonna tell you something. Biden loved to talk about the black press, and as we've stated, they have done absolutely nothing. They've given us access to certain things that we didn't always have. But I will say this, and not to be dismissive of it, because we've appreciated Roderica Applewhite, director of Black Media, very much appreciated her, and hopefully she lands squarely on her feet. Um, an amazing young woman. We've appreciated Erica Lowe, um, and others, but we had access, similar access, in the Trump administration, and that's just a fact. What they did not do, and neither did the Trump administration, they did not give us um, an interview with the president. And so we applauded rightfully so. All of the amounts of money that the Biden administration gave to HBCUs, his gallant attempt to forgive student loans. What's to stop him, if this was truly in his heart, if it wasn't just perfunctory that he was doing all this stuff, to say, okay, I'm going to, with all of this anti-black, anti-DE&I and anti-affirmative action and the oppression that's to come. What's to stop him right now? We know federal advertising with black-owned media is horrible. It's like 1/10 of 1% of what everyone else gets. What's to stop him to issuing a executive order now? Say, hey, between now, I'm going to set up between now and before I leave office next month, I'm going to set up black-owned media because we're going to need black-owned media. You're going to need black businesses too. And I'm not leaving them out, but I'm speaking for myself. Nobody else is doing it. Let's set them up. Executive order, $250 million, black-owned media. Let's make sure that they are able to have some wherewithal to still speak truth to power, still get information out. Executive order. We can run ads 5 times a day for the next month and a half about what's to come, about other stuff, about whatever they may want. I mean, come on. Chris says, do you even hear yourself? I'm serious. I'm serious, Greer. They spend $55 billion in advertising. We get of that 55 billion, what was it, like 10 million that the black owned businesses. You see, of the 55 billion. Give me a break. She's going to get a bowl of Captain Crunch. Um, I'm just saying, listen, legitimize yourself to black folks. You're 82 years old. You don't have too much longer here. I mean, Black Press is 197 years old. We got more time left than you probably. So let's. It's debatable, but we'll see. Um, the guy who I say is the greatest of all time, hands down. Go argue with yourself. I'm not into now. I will qualify by saying I have not been into today's hip hop. It's just not my thing. But I can tell you who I grew up on, and LL Cool J is simply the greatest of all time, and he's laying claim to being the most important rapper in history. Even as he says he's not going to take on the GOAT title. And LL was the one who coined the phrase GOAT. He was on an episode of Apple Music, Le Code, and he made his case for why he's the most important. He says, I'm going to say this. And he says, I'm going to say it humbly, as humbly as I can. He says, I think one day people are going to wake up and realize that LL Cool J is the most important rapper that ever existed. I truly believe one day people are going to say that. They're going to look and they're going to say, wow, when it comes to jewelry, this is the guy who introduced all the diamonds and the ice and the champagne. They're going to say when it comes to the love songs, this is the guy who introduced us to love songs. When it comes to the bad boy vibe, they're going to realize, oh, this is the guy who introduced all the rebellious bad boy vibes before it was done. When it comes to the GOAT terminology, they're going to say, this is the guy who came up with the GOAT stuff. They're gonna say when it comes to Def Jam, wow, this is the first artist that was on Def Jam. When it comes to solo rap artists, they're gonna say, wow, this is the first solo artist to take it all the way around the world. He says I could go on and on. They're gonna say when it comes to FUBU, yo, this guy introduced the whole idea of putting clothing lines in the Black community. Even before that, he did Troop. When it comes to endorsements, on this is the guy who did Kango and made the Kango popular before people even did that. And of course, when they talk about television, they're going to say, oh, this is the guy who did incredible stuff on TV and at the same time was still making incredible records. He says it wasn't just doing TV and using rap as a launch pad. When it comes to business, he says, I can go on and on and on. He says, I'm not saying I'm the greatest rapper of all time because that's still subjective because there's still a kid that the Tupac album is the most important album to them, and that changed their life. There's still a kid that thinks Snoop made the records that changed their life. There's still a kid that loves Biggie or loves Nas for music, for their music, and they should and have the right to do that. Do I call myself GOAT on the record? Of course, yes, I will. He says I say a lot of things on the record, but outside of being on the mic as an MC, there are too many rappers who have done too many important things for me to try to claim that I'm the one. Though he didn't add this to the list of reasons for considering himself the most important rapper, LL also recently claimed that he's partly responsible for Air Jordans being part of the hip hop uniform. He sat down with Big Boy earlier last month, and he spoke about being the first rapper to wear Michael Jordan's iconic basketball sneakers in the mid 80s before they became a staple in hip hop culture. He says his first album cover, he says, I had the Jordan sneakers on, and when he was a rookie, Michael Jordan was a rookie. He says, I was the first person with the Jordans on in the radio album cover. Michael Jordan was a rookie. When I did that, he says, everyone was wearing Adidas and Puma. I put the Jordans on. At that time, Jordan didn't even have championships, he said. He was just a rookie. He says, I just like the sneakers. And he said he was never paid for wearing the Jordans. He says, yeah, Michael never cut me a check, but you know what? I just loved it. When that album came out, Michael Jordan was a rookie. Those were the first Jordans, the first year that they came out. So, yeah, he and Paris Brown of the Baltimore Times says hip hop artists are the first influencers. They are. They definitely are. And listen, when it comes to what this guy accomplished, a guy who will tell you, who sat 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, right? 2020 is almost 5 years, um, with us on this program and talked about how he didn't even go to class in high school. Um, came out of Queens. There's so many great success stories when you really think about hip hop. I mean, we know. Look, love him or hate him, Will Smith is a great story. He's a really great story. So many great stories in hip hop, which brings me to this point. This whole Drake, Kendrick Lamar stuff. It's needless. It's pointless. So many great stories. Y'all always hear me talk about Chuck D and what he's been able to do with his career outside of music. And Chuck actually has a couple of degrees, college degrees. Um, you look at so many. I mean, Heavy D before he died, he was getting his chops in acting. Bismarck E. We know DMX's story. Method Man has has really set himself apart. Um, acting, you see Eric B is giving his best on Blue Bloods. So hip hop, if you recall, if you're old enough to recall, when it first emerged, the biggest thing folks said is just a fad. It will pass. No one will be thinking about hip hop by 1985. Yeah, here they are, 51 years later.
Kissing you on the
And
ear, whispering
there
I
it is.
love you and I'll always be here. Although I often reminisce, I can't believe that I found a desire for true love floating around inside my soul, because my soul is cold. One half of me deserves to be this way till I'm old, but the other half needs affection and joy, and the warmth that is created by a girl and a boy. I need love.
So tell me how your tour is going.
Tour's doing good, you know what I'm saying? It's real successful, you know. We selling a lot of tickets. It's just, it's real hectic, you know what I'm saying? Interview.
I think he invented that too, right? Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? Ladies love Cool James, LL Cool J, the GOAT, and laying claim to the most important rap of all time. Danielle Pierre says a few of my favorite songs: LL, I Need Love, Going Back to Cali, and Paradise with A. Marie. Yeah, he's got so many hits. It's always hard to, you know, he's like he is like the hip hop version of like Prince or Michael Jackson, right? I mean, just hit after hit after hit. He's so many that you're like, okay, how do you pick your favorite? And he's got so many. Booming System, Brown Away Girl, Bamboo Earrings, at least two pair, Fendi Bag, Bad Attitude. We can go on and on. Mike B says, looks like the mayoral race in New York City is heating up with 8 candidates looking to unseat Mayor Adams. The Mayor Adams is, of course, enlisted, not officially, not formally, but certainly has enlisted the aid of the president-elect. We've seen that he went to that UFC match and kissed the ring over there at Madison Square Garden. We know that's really twofold, right? First and foremost, his Hail Mary to stay out of prison, and secondly, with the hope that I'm sure with the hope that eventually he'd get that endorsement. Adams is he's an interesting story. He's an interesting story. Former cop who just had, you know, he was like a kid, had these big dreams. And I mean, look, he's reached the pinnacle in politics in the city of New York. You know, like him or not, whether he's a criminal or not. And I believe, no, I know, not believe, but I know his crimes, his alleged crimes are federal. So he knows what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. And so, folks, we know what we're doing here too. Oh gosh, yes, he is from Queens. Listen, there, right before you live and prove good things come out of Queens. Great things come out of Queens. Kings from Queens. From Queens comes kings. We raising hell like a child when the lunch bell rings. We'll see you tomorrow.
Now you look booty like that bum is given. Whoever keeps you up now, how should I say it? Whoever set you up, they just had to play it. Cause man, yo, I feel for you, brother. I'm a bad. Word to the brother. Taking out suckers while the ladies innovating, devastating. You don't want a single now. Jingle, baby.